All right, good morning. Good morning. Let me get my mic over here. I think I didn't know I was doing a show today. Oh, we'll get her lowered down here a bit. There we go. All right. I think that's good. We'll get it yet. Good morning. Good morning. I hope you guys, let me turn this down. You guys have had a great couple of weeks. My ears are, that is just a hot mic. Hope you guys have had a good time getting prepared for Christmas. As you know, I've been out with surgery, had my gastric sleeve surgery revised to a gastric bypass because I was having such bad reflux that it was damaging my vocal cords. And so I think surgery after 50 is just harder. I don't know why. Like, I think I had surgery when I was 49 and it didn't seem this hard. That said, it took me like 8 weeks the last time before I felt like I could get off the couch. I just was feeling rough. This time that's much, I got way too much headspace. This time that was much better. In the hospital, I was feeling pretty good. I was walking. I was having a lot of pain, but I was still doing all the things I was supposed to do. So I was walking like 40 minutes to an hour in the hallway. They're like, get up twice a day and walk around the nurse's station. But, I'm an overachiever that way. So maybe I was doing too much. Ended up having to stay an extra day, and came home and was doing really, really well. Like let me think. I went to my 1 week post-op visit, broke out in shingles. That was fun. Went to my 1 week post-op visit and had told the nurse practitioner that I had rented an e-bike because I've wanted one for a really long time. I blew out my knee in high school and I've not been able, I can ride flat, but I can't ride up hills and stuff. And I live in Kentucky. And so I got an e-bike to see if I would actually like it or not before buying one. And they've gone down so much. So I'm asking for one for Christmas from my darling husband. But anyway, they've gone down so much. I wasn't sure if I'd like it. I didn't want to make that big of a purchase. Hi. Oh, hi, Ashley. I didn't want to make that big of a purchase without like knowing more about it. Hey, let's get sewing. Definitely better. So last Friday, the bike came and I saw the doctor on Thursday. And Thursday, they okayed me to ride the bike, right? And I think maybe they should have thought more about that because I had never ridden one before. When the guy brought the bike, he knew nothing about it. And so he's like, I don't know. I mean, the key goes here. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I know how to ride a motorcycle. How hard can it be? I underestimated. So the story goes, I underestimated the weight of the bike. The bike is 60 pounds. And that's no small thing when you're trying to get used to a bike and you've just had surgery. And so I got on the bike and I thought I knew it had like a pedal assist for up hills. No, I'm not restarting my computer. Stop it. Hold on. We got to stop this. Remind me in 24 hours. Don't you dare restart. Hate when it does that. So I get on it outside. I get to the neighbor's house and I'm like, you know what? This feels a little like too restricting to be trying to ride this for the first time. And I know how to ride a bike. To ride it for the first time on the sidewalk, though, I'm like, I think I need a little more room. And so I decided to go out into the street with it. And our street's pretty quiet. And so I'm turning it around to go into the street. So I've got to turn it completely around because I wanted to walk it into the street, not ride it into the street. And I forgot, or I think I didn't even know yet that there's a throttle on the right handlebar. Okay, wait, we have to go back. First, the great jiu-jitsu battle. So I was watching Dan Bongino before surgery, and he did a Friday special where he went through like self-defense and stuff like that. And so he has this guy that he really respects that does jiu-jitsu. And so this guy is showing this hold where the aggressor is on the floor on his back and the good guy is on top of him. So he's laying on top of him just like this. And he's got his two legs hooked in behind the guy's knees. So his legs are between the guy's legs, hooked into his knees. And so Dan's, I think that's right, or maybe they were outside and hooked in. I think they were outside and hooked in. And so I'm like, okay, well, that's not going to work. I mean, maybe if you're a guy and you've got some weight on this person, but if you're just a little girl, he's just going to flip you and then he's going to be on top of you. Then you're really in trouble. So as soon as I think that, Dan's like, and if he tries to flip you, and I'm like, oh, good, there's an answer for that. And so he said, if he tries to flip you, you just kind of lift your head up and you bear all your weight on your hips, because the way to control somebody is with the hips. And as he tries to flip you, you put one knee down. And if he tries to flip you the other way, you put the other knee down. And so I'm like, okay, Don, let's try it. Because what if somebody gets me and I need to be able to jiu-jitsu them, right? And yes, we have these kinds of conversations. So he gets on the floor, he lays down on his back. I get on top of him, I hook my legs in his legs. And I'm like, okay, now don't go easy on me. Really try to flip me. So he goes one way and I manage it. He goes the other way, I manage it. Then he really tries, right? So then he goes to the left. Somehow this man gets my entire boob pinned between his armpit and his body. And then he like lunges over, which skins all the skin off my knee, and he's strangling my boob. And I'm yelling, oh God, let go of my boob. Let go. So I lost the great jiu-jitsu battle, right? And I had this big skinned up knee, and it'll be the story we can tell our grandkids. Okay, back to the bike. So I go to turn the bike and I'm doing this little sharp turn thing and I'm on it, and it's a step through. So there's no bar, thank God. And I hit the accelerator and I'm not exactly sure what happened then, but I fell off the bike and the whole handlebar thing came around this way as I was falling, and the handlebar went right like this far above my incision into my stomach. Bam, right? And so I'm laying there on the ground, and you know how, I don't know how old you guys are. I know most of you are close to my age. I don't know how you guys handle it when you fall or if you've fallen, but you kind of lay there for a minute, you do this body survey, you're like, okay, that seems to be working. And I'm outside, like I'm thinking people can see me and stuff. And so I lay there and I'm like, okay, that seems good. That seems good. And I landed full weight on my jiu-jitsu battle knee, and it didn't hurt. I mean, there was not an ounce of pain anywhere. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I jump up, I get out from under this bike. I'm outside by myself and I yell, I'm invincible. Good morning, Marie. So it turned out I wasn't invincible, because I woke up the next day and I could not stand up straight. I was in agony. I mean, worse than surgery. And so I'm doubled over to the side, like crying. Don's having to, thank God it was a Saturday. Don has to help me get up out of the bed. I'm down the whole day. I've got this ice machine from when I had my shoulder surgery. So we just did ice for the first 24 hours. Then we started alternating ice and heat. I'm expecting like some huge bruise. I'm feeling to see if maybe I herniated my incision. And everything seems to be okay. Digestion is okay. Everything sounds normal in there. And so I'm thinking, okay, it's a setback. Sure. Don's like, I do not want you on that bike. You didn't have a helmet. You weren't wearing high visibility clothing. So I bought this bright orange jacket and an orange and black helmet and orange gloves and an orange gaiter and lined fleece leggings to keep me warm, because I'm going to ride that bike. I loved it. Okay, so after I fall, I get back on. I ride all over the neighborhood. The assist is amazing. If you have been on the fence about buying an electric bike, let me encourage you, just take the plunge. I always loved bike riding, always, as a kid, as a teenager. And my dad would run like 20 miles and I would ride my bike with him. I love bike riding. And I've been so bummed out living in Kentucky because I cannot get up these hills with this knee. I was just sailing up these hills, and I was just pedaling on my own. But then when I would get to like a hill that was hard, I would kick in the throttle. So I wasn't using like I wasn't doing it in moped. There's a mode for that. I can't think of what it's called. But I rode all over. I rode up like Boonesboro Road, which is a road pretty close to our house that is a 2-lane road. And I was a little nervous to get out on it without a helmet, but it was early enough in the day that it's not real busy out there. So I rode down 2 neighborhoods, rode through that neighborhood, was gone like 40 minutes, which is pretty good. I mean, I was a week post-op that Monday. Is that right? Yeah, yeah. So I saw the doctor Thursday. Yeah, because I was 2 weeks post-op this Monday. So anyway, I've not gone to the doctor yet, but I'm still having trouble getting upright. So we probably won't do a 2-hour read today. Um, and Don made me email him. He's like, at least email them and make sure they don't need to see you and make sure it's okay. So we'll see. But I'm down 20 pounds. I think I was down 20 pounds. We're 2 weeks post-op at a week and a half. So I've not really lost much since then, but I have put on muscle because I've been exercising, and I'm getting into clothes that, I'll sit back a little bit so you can kind of see. I don't know if you guys saw me when I painted. I was surprised. I gained 8 pounds right before surgery because I was grief eating, like I was thinking, when am I going to be able to, because I was so sick with the first surgery. That surgeon was horrible. I mean, I couldn't eat for months and months and months. My digestion was so screwed up, and so was everyone else that had surgery with this guy. This was a cakewalk in comparison. And it was a much bigger surgery. And so anyway, why was I telling you all of that? Anyway, I'm glad I had it done. Had my cholesterol checked the other day. For the first time in 20 years, my cholesterol is normal. So I was pretty excited about that. But I was looking at that video, that crafting video, and my face is so round and I've got a lot of chin, and you could tell that I was grief eating, and I wasn't eating like cookies and cupcakes and stuff like that. I was eating bacon and steak, things that are hard to digest after you have a surgery. With the last time I had the surgery, it took me like 7 months before I could eat stuff like that. So anyway, I gained 8 pounds before surgery. So the doctor's like, you're doing great. You're down, what'd she say? You're down at like 8 pounds or something like that. And I'm like, oh no, honey, I'm down 20 because I gained, I won't say what the I was 216 the day that I did and I hold my weight really well. I carry it everywhere, which is a blessing. My poor mother, she just laments because she carries it all in her middle, which is the most dangerous place to carry it. But anyway, and so I'm down 20 pounds. So like I couldn't wear this shirt before. You can see I'm slimming down, and we'll keep up with that. Try not to bend over, and the shirt's a little lower cut than I'm comfortable with. But I used to wear it, so I'm trying not to be too hard on myself physically. Anyway, so all that's gone on. I've been trying to get ready for Christmas. I've been making the jewelry. I'm making jewelry for all the girls. So we've got my daughter, my almost daughter-in-law, my daughter-in-law, my other daughter-in-law, and then 2 granddaughters that are old enough to wear jewelry. So I've been working on that. I've been doing the acrylic skins that I showed you guys before. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but this is one of the necklaces. If it's going to... That camera just doesn't like to focus close. Dang, I wish you could see it better. Maybe like that. Anyway, I made all these little acrylic skins, and then I cut them. So I made these on purpose. These weren't runoff from projects. I made these skins specifically. So I bought these little jewelry things, and they've got these little cabochons that go on the top. Thank you, Kay. I'm feeling good, except for the belly. I've got a TENS unit on my back and my belly where they're really sore, so I may have to turn that on and off during the show to stay comfortable. But this is one of the bracelets. Gosh, I wish you could see it better. Anyway, I'll have to take some pictures because they're really hard to see, but they're super pretty. And this is another bracelet. These are just the different kinds. And this one's blue and green, I think because there's so much light behind us. I can't do it. Anyway, I'll take some pictures. I'm doing snowflake cutting workshop today, like for fabric, or are you going to video it? You need a YouTube channel. Let's Get Sewing. I would so watch your YouTube channel. I love crafts, and I'm trying to develop hobbies to help me deal with stress because this work is kind of really stressful. But man, I would love to see the kind of crafts you guys are doing, and maybe we could do a show together where we do some kind of mutual craft. That would be super fun. And I would love to just come hang out with you and learn the basics of sewing. Like I know how to tear 4x4 inch squares and put a quilt together, but that's about the length. And I could hem something if I needed to, but I would really like to be proficient on a sewing machine, cutting patterns, that sort of thing. I'm really, really bad at measuring, but I learned geography and I was really bad at and didn't know anything about geography. So I think there's hope for measuring. And I've always been embarrassed about that too. Can you put that necklace? I didn't make this one, but I bought it and it's super pretty. So anyway, we're going to start reading today John Burke's book called Imagine the God of Heaven. I feature in chapter 11, so part of my story is in this book. It's with paper, my private war against square snowflakes. Would you please video that? Or, have somebody video, just set it up. The sound doesn't have to be great. I just would like to be able to see what you're doing. And that's another avenue for you. YouTube, there's a lot of crafters on YouTube if you're not already doing that. But if you are, please, my email address is in the thing. I know you have it. And thank you for the donations, everybody. You guys have been so sweet. I had 2 people who don't know about the show. They do now, but didn't know about the show. And they saw, I think one saw my interview with Jeff Mara, and the other one might have been Anthony Cheen. And that movie's not out. His next movie's not out yet, but when it is, I'll let you guys know because I feature in that. But I got a donation from a total stranger who had just seen one of my videos that covered my copay for my surgery. And I mean, total stranger. And then I got another donation from another gal, and that really, really helped too. And so covered some of our, out-of-pocket stuff with surgery. So that really helped. We've still got some. I think you guys don't know this, but when I was back and I was so sick, we incurred over $1 million in medical bills. So every donation that you guys send is really, really helpful because we've been trying to pay that down for years. I just happened to get sick when I had been out of work and didn't have insurance and didn't qualify for any kind of medical assistance. So I've been paying on that forever. We'll likely never get out of it before I die, but we're trying. I feel like the mic is low. You guys let me know if you're having trouble hearing. I'm going to turn it up a little bit, or if it's blaring in your ear. Let's Get Sewing says, I have a guest room if you want to come visit and learn to sew. Not sure I'm tech savvy enough. Well, I should come and you should teach me to sew and I should teach you how to video stuff. But you're all the way out in Washington, aren't you? I love this idea of like going around and traveling to different places. And I've done it a little bit and doing talks about my near-death experiences and then staying with people that already know me from my shows. When we went to Phoenix to film the documentary, and that's a whole different film. That was with Craig McMahon. That one's on Amazon Prime. It's called Death and Back Again, Part 2 or something like that. And my story is the last story in that one. And there's some cheesy, the guy who directed it, produced and directed it, sweet as he can be. But he did like these cheesy recaps after everybody told their story, like after each one. And that was the only complaint in any of the reviews of the movie. So yeah, you're in Spokane. I would love to see that part of the country. I've never been out. Well, no, it's not true. I did speak at a past lives conference about my near-death experience in California. And we had planned to stay a week at like 3 days. My daughter was like, can we go home? The traffic was horrible. The people were rude. It was dirty. We were accosted by several homeless people, like aggressively for cash, which I don't carry cash generally, just for safety reasons. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't want to go back to LA. But I liked Phoenix. We've been to Cocoa Beach, did a talk there. We've done a talk up in Cincy. And so, I'm open to it. I've done talks for groups in Texas, so all kinds of stuff. I did get some Christmas cards I wanted to share. This one is from Isaac's mom. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. The airport near me, we've got Lexington Airport. Then we've got one out of Cincy and one out of Louisville. But I don't know the abbreviations. Penny, I haven't stopped, nor will I. That your surgery goes well. I think she means praying. You're such a blessing to me. When I pray for you, I have to stop and say to the Lord, wow, Penny got to talk to God. That's so wonderful. Truly, I smile as soon as your videos begin. But just rest and get completely well, okay? You are so loved. Merry Christmas and a blessed New Year. from Frank and Nadine, and that's Isaac's mom from our chat. Thank you so much. Beautiful, beautiful Christmas card. I've not sent any back out. I've just been recovering and trying to keep my head above water with staying on because I'm making all the Christmas presents this year. So that's been, I don't know what I was thinking. I just really wanted, I want my children and my grandchildren to have something like when I'm gone that I made them. That's just really important to me. So this one, very cute, the little Peanuts characters. And this is from my friends Ben and Casey. Ben is the one I told you about that had COVID so bad, had it as bad as I had it, and I thought he was going to die. And I went out there, and they have 6 kids and all this stuff. And so anyway, we ended up being able to save Ben, and it was a great thing and wonderful for their family. She says, hope this joyful season finds you surrounded by laughter, love, and fun. Wishing you and yours a very Merry Christmas. Love, Ben, Casey, Jacob, Rebecca, Hannah, Thomas, Madeline, and Jonah. And there's their crew of 6. Aren't they gorgeous kids? They're so pretty. And there's Ben. You can see Ben way up here at the top. I know it's tiny, but anyway, I think that's all the ones we've got. But I just wanted to share those. So we are going to be reading in chapter 1, and I'll just go as long as I feel okay. If I get to feeling tired, we'll stop. Trying to be generous with myself here. Okay. Show it in the screen, goofball. Give me just a second here. Yes, remove. Okay, let me reshare it. What the heck? Stop. Trash that. All right, let me try this again. I don't know why it's got my second camera on. Window. Where did it go? Kindle. There we go. That one. Share. Okay, let's see if it made it up there on the screen. Yep, we just got to crop it. But anyway, I hope your holidays are going well. I hope it's not been too stressful for you. For people who've lost someone, know that I'm praying about that. I know the holidays can be a really, really hard time of year for a lot of people. But, know that God is with you. We're with you. You've got a family here on the Nurse Penny channel for sure. And you're loved and thought of. All right, I think I got that now. And let me see if I can bring my other window up here and get our chat back up. Okay. Chapter 1. Hey, hold on. Everything went crazy. Hold on. Okay. Let me make sure you guys can still see it. Yep. Okay. What the? I'm not that good with tech either, as you can see. Okay. The God of all nations. Code blue, yelled the nurse over the intercom. For an entire week, Santosh Akarji had been fighting for his life. He realized he was dying. He had just given his wife, son, and daughter-in-law his final blessing when he went into cardiac arrest. The medical staff rushed into action to get his heart going again, but their efforts failed. Santosh clinically died. I always thought that once you die, your life is finished. That's it. But when I died, I discovered your life isn't over. There's another life after that. I realized I'm not dead. I can analyze, interpret. I was curious and wondering as I saw a bright light coming toward me. I could see my body lying on the hospital bed. This light was so bright. I knew that this light has superior authority. I had to obey that light. No one had to tell me, I just knew. When the light came near me, he engulfed me with his radiance, and all that I could see was the divine light. I immediately fell in love with the divine light. I knew the light's purpose was not to harm me, but to protect me. I felt safe. Santosh had grown up in a conservative Hindu family in India. His father was a revered scholar of Sanskrit and an honored Hindu priest, which meant Hinduism was all Santosh had known from birth. Santosh had become a well-respected manufacturing engineer, traveling the world and living in India, Canada, Brazil, and the US while working. Life was great until the day his heart went erratic, racing at over 200 beats per minute. That'll kill you. Doctors at the hospital initially thought Santosh was having a heart attack, but it turned out to be gallstones that had ruptured with such force that they perforated not only his gallbladder, but also his pancreas. Yikes. Doctors gave Santosh the bad news that they couldn't operate when his heart rate remained so high. All they could do was wait and hope it would calm down or would come down. Day by day, things progressively got worse until the day Santosh's heart stopped completely. Ultimately, doctors were able to stabilize Santosh enough to put him in a medically induced coma where he remained on machines for 3 days and nights. Santosh clinically died, yet he felt more alive than ever. He was traveling with a brilliant light he knew was God. I remember passing through some black holes like big round tunnels at tremendous speed. Together we traveled for quite some time. When the light stopped, he was still looking at me, and I was looking at him as well. I was wondering, why did the light stop moving? What do I do now? I was seeing that the light stopped inside a large compound that was surrounded with very high and extraordinarily beautiful walls. The light was shining on this huge compound, a beautiful compound, and I could see everything far better than I can see normally in this world. My vision was unlimited. I could see from one end to the other with no obstruction, and I could zoom in like a powerful camera can do. As I looked at this compound, I could see many, many beautiful homes, mansions in it, surrounded by high, thick walls. Looking into the interior, I could see it was a square shape, and inside it, there were people. They were walking. Some were floating in the air. It was like a city full of mansions, like a modern city you'd think of, but not made with the materials of this world, made of things we don't even know of here. Gorgeous. I counted 12 gates all around this city, but none of the gates were open for me. I wanted to go inside, but I could not go inside. I was just outside the gate. I saw many angels there. I knew these angels were there to protect this beautiful compound, and I realized I'm looking at the kingdom of heaven. Nothing in this world could ever come close to the beauty of this place. The entire area inside the compound looked so peaceful and so calm that I instantly fell in love with the place. I kept thinking, how do I get into this beautiful place? There has to be an entrance somewhere. Where is the entrance? Then the Lord spoke to me. He has a very deep, commanding voice, but at the same time, I noticed his voice was also a loving one. When the Lord spoke, I could understand what he said in any of the languages that I knew: Bengali, English, Hindi, German, Portuguese. He said to me in an authoritative but loving voice, I'm sending you back to earth. Go back and complete your unfinished tasks. When you are back, I want you to love your family and love your children. Pay attention to your daughter. She needs your help. We talked for a long time. I don't know how long it was. I didn't know who he was except that he was God. I didn't have to ask or find out. I knew this was Lord of everything, Lord of all. To me, he was very kind, loving, and like a true friend with genuine concern for each and every one of us. When I came back, I was very troubled. Life got busy again. But it was bothering me, all the things I witnessed there. I was familiar with the Hindu scriptures, so I was wondering why I did not encounter any of the Hindu gods and goddesses and all these things we know. Who was this I witnessed? He is not like them. Who was that? It's intriguing that although the 12 gates Santosh witnessed in the heavenly compound were closed, he later discovered one very narrow gate that he said was open to him. Through it, he could see a way into the kingdom of heaven. As Santosh's story unfolds in the chapters ahead, we will explore more about what he experienced with God and what he discovered about the narrow gate. But first, who is this loving God of light that Santosh and others from all over the world have encountered in their near-death experiences? Global evidence. Since the age of modern medical resuscitation and access to digital communication, more and more reports have surfaced across the globe about people being brought back from clinical death. A Gallup poll found that 8 million Americans have had near-death experiences, NDE. A study presented in 2019 to the European Academy of Neurology found that about 5.5% of people across 35 countries reported having had a near-death experience, which involved a life-threatening situation. Oftentimes, people have a cardiac arrest, no heartbeat, and no brain waves, and yet modern medicine, or miracle, brings them back after minutes to hours of no registered brain activity. They come back to testify about an experience they say was more real than anything they have ever experienced on Earth. And the memory of this experience is not like other memories. As Renee from Australia says, the memory of the NDE is more real than what I did yesterday. I would agree with that. Each NDE account is unique to the individual, yet they all share striking similarities, core commonalities I have explored and written about extensively. But by far, the most emphatic and consistent comment from the thousands of NDEs I've studied is that there is absolutely nothing on earth, no experience we could imagine that compares to being in the presence of God. Based on what NDEers report, the characteristics of this God are the same, no matter what nation, religion, or culture the individual comes from. Although NDEers may interpret the identity of this God from their own cultural and religious framework, the divine being they described is consistent. For instance, regardless of where they're from, NDEers consistently talk about two key characteristics of this God: light and love. God of light. When people die clinically, many report experiencing a being of light they intuitively recognize as God. Hyperbole, or piling on adjective after adjective, seems to be the only way NDEers can convey, within the constraints of human language, the exhilarating light of God. That is so true. In Africa, Mario contracted Plasmodium falciparum, the most dangerous type of malaria causing parasite with the highest mortality rate. His wife found him unconscious. When the doctor arrived, he discovered that Mario's heart had stopped. I lived the experience of my travel in this indescribable and wonderful light, where I have been enveloped with much love and peace, finding myself in a place where so much joy could be breathed, facing huge and wonderful flowers with intoxicating perfumes. There in that place, I met my parents who passed a few years ago. Only my mother talked, saying that it wasn't my hour yet. My wonderful experience has erased any fear of death and gives to me the certainty that God is waiting for us with joy. After attempting to restart his heart, the doctor took Mario to the hospital. Upon arrival, a neurologist evaluated him and initially declared him a closed case. Yet he miraculously revived from clinical death. God is the light that brings life, yet we live in a world that often breeds darkness and death. People do evil things. Injustice lurks around every corner. People hurt us, and we hurt others even when trying to do our best. We have so many questions about life that seem to leave us in the dark. Who am I? Why am I here? Am I doing the right things? Why do I struggle so? Why does God, if there is a God, not seem to help? As we will learn, knowing God brings light into our darkness. And for Marcia, this truth was experienced in a very surprising, real way. In America, a legally blind woman, Marcia, had an NDE. She'd been born with ROP, retinopathy of prematurity. Though she could see some light from her left eye, Marcia needed a seeing eye dog. When the blind experience an NDE, they can see the same commonalities as the sighted. At age 32, while in the hospital, Marcia lost consciousness with no pulse detected for 30 minutes. She found herself going up in a dark black tunnel, and she heard music and bells, but said, "Not like bells here, it was different." A tiny white light far away grew brighter and bigger until it filled the whole end of the tunnel where she had stopped. First, all I saw was the light, and then I hear the voice, and it says, "Come to the light." I know I have to go. I know it was like God or something. It was like you see the face in the light, but you can't see it really. Yes. And it's a different light. It's not like light on earth or sunlight. It's like white light, but more like golden white light. And it moves, it shimmers. It's not like any kind of light in the world. It's warm, like you were in the light, like you were in the light. Not only do you see the light, but you become part of the light, and the light goes around you. It's like God in the light. Nothing on earth is like that. I would agree. The light has tiny little flecks of gold in it that put off their own light. It's really interesting and hard to describe. Marcia saw angels who had bodies, but noticed you could see through them almost, which coincides with what some sighted NDEers also say. She saw her grandmother and aunt who had died years earlier. And to her surprise, she saw her friend Hank, who had also been blind and died in 1982. Marcia noticed that although on earth Hank was blind and he had amputated fingers and amputated legs, there in heaven, it was like his body was right. It was whole. Even those who are blind on earth can clearly see in the light of God. This light brings hope into our darkness. As one NDEer from New Zealand discovered in God's presence, He is light. His love was healing my heart, and I began to understand that there is incredible hope for humankind. People all around the world need hope. I've traveled to 30 countries over the past 30 years talking about real-world struggles with Buddhists in Mongolia, Muslims in Kazakhstan, and Hindus in India. I've listened to Norwegians, Australians, Africans, Koreans, Brazilians, and many others as they told me their struggles, failures, sins, and shame. We all struggle, we all fail, we all fall, and we all need hope everywhere. Nan, a young woman of Middle Eastern descent, had lost all hope. When she tried to take her own life, she died, left her body, and found herself traveling while flanked by two women, one she identified as her guardian angel. She saw a pinpoint of light in the distance and realized they were moving very rapidly toward it. As they came closer to the light grew larger and its white glow purer. I saw tens of thousands of beings dressed in white gowns, all facing the light and in the service of the light, and apparently singing praises to the light. The light was filled with the most extraordinary, overwhelming, and indescribable feeling of love. The light spoke in a man's voice, firm and direct, saying only, "Go back. You have a great deal to learn." Many NDEers come back and seek to learn more about the God of light, but others do not. God gives us the choice to seek Him or ignore Him. It's also important to note that just because an NDEer sees God does not mean that that person knows God or is necessarily right with God. I believe these experiences simply offer the individual a peek into a greater reality, and they are a gift that allows all of us to learn more about who we are in relationship to God. On every continent, NDEers say the light of God is alive and unlike any other light we know. It's a light that's palpable and experienced through multiple senses. It's a light that offers unconditional love and life and brings inexpressible hope and joy. As we will see, this God of light is the love we all crave. In God's presence, we can all see more clearly who we are to God, how God feels about each one of us, and how that love can change us for the better. God of love. In London, Mary was pregnant but bleeding severely. As soon as she arrived at the emergency room, the staff came running to find Mary drenched with blood from the navel down in an extremely critical condition. Mary recalls hearing a pop, and then all the pain suddenly stopped. She found herself up near the ceiling of the emergency room, looking down. She felt calm for the first time since learning of her pregnancy by a man who had deceived her. He had told her he loved her and wanted to marry her, yet the pregnancy revealed the truth. He had a wife and 5 children in another city, and he soon abandoned her. She pondered these things as she floated up by the ceiling, watching the doctors operating on her. Mary heard a nurse, the only one in a blue smock, tell the doctors she had lost consciousness. Yet she felt completely conscious and aware of every detail of what was happening in the operating room. I floated toward a tunnel and passed right through a ceiling fan and then the ceiling, Mary said. The tunnel was black and churning as Mary gained more and more speed, heading for a bright light. She felt the comforting presence of her deceased grandfather there with her, so she had no fear. As she comes out of the end of the tunnel, she recalls, I was overwhelmed by a radiant white light that seemed to embody all the concepts of love. A love that was unconditional and like a mother has for a child. It was definitely a warm, joyful presence that radiated all the good and noble emotions known to man. I had given up the ways of the Catholic Church, but I knew in my heart that this was God. Words can't describe my awe in this presence. As time stood still, God showed Mary her life. She said he knew her every thought and feeling, and she never wanted to leave his presence. As he gave her a life review, Mary not only observed each moment, she experienced her life all over again, including the impact of every good or bad action. She actually felt how it made others feel, yes, as if sharing some divine perspective on all the ripple effects and consequences of her actions. It was a difficult time for me, but I was supported by God's unconditional love and weathered the painful parts. I was asked telepathically about whether I wanted to stay or return. I fell to my knees in order to show my desire to stay with him. Mary came back to earth after God showed her that her baby boy would live, and she needed to be there for him. She felt forgiven, washed clean, and unconditionally loved in God's presence. And Mary came back with dramatic evidence this experience was real. While she was floating up near the ceiling of the emergency room, Mary said she noticed a red label on the side of the blade of a ceiling fan facing the top of the ceiling. After reviving in the recovery room, Mary kept asking medical personnel to listen to the amazing experience she had just had. Only one nurse listened, and only after Mary gave details of what she had observed during the operation, including what the nurse had said to the doctors while Mary was unconscious. Finally, convinced, the nurse and an orderly got a tall ladder and checked for the red sticker. The red sticker Mary described in great detail on the hidden side of the ceiling fan. Mary said the nurse and an orderly saw the sticker, confirming all the details of its appearance as I described. As we imagine God's love accurately, It can change us from wanting to avoid God to longing to know God better. I believe God's love is the love we all crave. Howard Storm, I love Howard, he's a friend of ours, a university professor and NDEer I interviewed, described God's love this way. Imagine all the love you've ever experienced from parents, grandparents, lovers, spouses, children, and put all that love across your lifetime into a single moment. Then multiply by 1,000. That's God's love for you. Hope for all people. Never in the history until now have we been able to hear from so many people around the world brought back from clinical death. I believe NDEs are God's gift to our globally connected world, widespread evidence of God's reality and His great love for people of all nations. Already in this chapter, you've read about encounters with God described by Indian, African, North American, Middle Eastern, and European NDEers. As you will continue to discover in the pages that follow, people from diverse religious backgrounds and cultures encounter the same God of light and love in their NDEs. How do we explain such a diversity of humanity agreeing on the basic description of the God they encounter in clinical death? Could it be that God is reaching out to humanity in a profound way, offering hope to people of all nations? Not only will you read stories of people from diverse cultures, but also from professors, psychologists, doctors, lawyers, CEOs, people who only lose professional credibility talking about wild stories of seeing God. People like Dr. Bell Chung. A native of Hong Kong, Dr. Bell Chung earned his PhD in cognitive psychology and loved adventure travel. By the age of 30, he had gone scuba diving, skiing, and mountain climbing in 30 countries. But the ultimate form of adventure and freedom for Dr. Chung was hang gliding, to fly free as a bird. While vacationing in New Zealand, he went hang gliding in the mountains one day. Just after liftoff, he noticed the glider was climbing too fast and at too steep an angle. Just as sharp as its ascent, the glider stalled and plummeted down like a broken kite, falling over 100 meters. Bang! As the glider hit the ground, it smashed into pieces. Dr. Chung found himself looking down on the wrecked body of the glider, glass and metal strewn across the ground. I saw a broken young man lying there dying, Dr. Chung said. In horror, I realized this man looked just like me. That's my body. Dr. Chung then noticed a warm, golden light that spoke to him. The darkness is over. Welcome to the brightness, the golden light said to me. I found myself bathed in a sea of golden light, so peaceful and calm. I was fully embraced by a comfortable love and gentleness. I also found my body dazzling, reflecting rays of golden light. The sense of warmth and love saturated me. Would you like to go or stay? Someone was speaking to me from the source of light. Our communication did not work through the voice, but the mind, like telepathy. I tried to look at the source of light, but could hardly see anything or any person other than the halo of light. I had no idea who was speaking to me, but I knew that was the source of the greatest love. Perhaps it's what we called God. To go or to stay, I muttered. Does it mean I choose between life and death? This is the last question of your life. He seemed to be able to comprehend my thoughts. Before making your decision, you may wish to see your life in review. I found myself in a cinema with thousands of screens around me. Playing on every screen were episodes of the different moments in my 30 years of life, from early childhood till the present, some which I had remembered, some of which I had long forgotten. I was intrigued by this fascinating panoramic picture of my entire life. Dr. Chung eventually returned. It took a rescue team 30 minutes to cut him out of the wreckage. After 3 days in a coma, he began the long road of recovery as a different man. People of all nationalities, professions, and backgrounds encounter the same God of light and love in their NDEs. God is not experienced as an impersonal force, but as a personal God who knows each individual more intimately than they had ever imagined. Recalling things about their lives even they had forgotten, they all come back knowing that God is love and that love is what matters most to God. Love has a history. Spilling coffee everywhere. Apparently that drinking skill has evaded me. As we all come to understand, our modern era of NDEs is not the first time this God of light and love has revealed himself. Near the beginning of written history, around 4,000 years ago, and before any of the world's modern religions were formalized in a sacred text, God claims he appeared with a plan to bless all the nations. The Lord had said to Abram, "I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." Genesis 12, verses 1 through 3. Oh, thank you, Aspect. We will explore how the same things NDEers say today align with God's heart revealed throughout history. I am convinced God created all people in his image, and he is for all people of all nations. NDEers confirm God speaks to them in their native languages. This God sees all, knows all, wants to forgive all, and unconditionally loves each person uniquely. If you will keep an open mind and follow me on this journey of imagining God, I hope you'll see that a loving relationship, not religion, is actually what God wants with you and me. As you read Imagine the God of Heaven, I hope you will begin to discover what I have found to be true. While I have never had a mystical spiritual experience, such as those described by NDEers, I have clearly seen how this love from God is real and available to us ordinary, non-NDEers. God cares uniquely about each individual he created. I believe he wants us all to know and even experience his great love in a very personal way. Could you use more love in your life? Read on. I believe this book will help you discover the love you've always wanted. Then they've got endnotes at the end of every chapter. Science, Skeptics, and NDEs, Chapter 2. Dr. Rajiv Parthi, chief anesthesiologist of the Bakersfield Heart Hospital, had decided to attend this surgery personally due to the risky nature of the procedure. Hypothermic cardiopulmonary bypass and circulatory arrest is a procedure used only in extreme cases, often to repair deep brain aneurysms or an aortic tear that would otherwise kill the patient. In this procedure, the patient's blood is replaced by a cool liquid that lowers the body's temperature to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 degrees Celsius. No respirator is used to keep the patient breathing, so the lungs and brain receive no oxygen. The EKG machine used to monitor heartbeat shows a flat line, indicating that no blood is flowing to the brain, or through the heart for that matter. All organs stop functioning, and the patient's brain shows no waves on the EEG machine. By all measures, the patient is clinically dead. It's a very risky, no other options procedure. The patient himself did not expect to survive. However, when he did survive, Dr. Parthi entered the patient's room to rouse and congratulate him. The man looked up at him and smiled. Dr. Parthi shares what transpired. "I was watching you guys in the operating room," the patient said. "I was out of my body, floating around by the ceiling. Yeah, he said, I saw you just standing. That can't be true, Dr. Partee thought. Yeah, he said, I saw you just standing at the head of the table. I saw the surgeon sewing the patch on my artery. The patient told Dr. Partee how many surgeons he'd seen. He described the nurses, the medical team's actions during the operation, and other details that could only have been observed from somewhere above them all. Over the years, Dr. Partee had overseen hundreds of surgeries in which the patient's heart stopped or barely beat. He had heard cardiac arrest patients insist they'd seen friends who had died, a light at the end of a tunnel, or a being of light. But he wrote it all off as psychotic delusions. As he learned in medical school, if he couldn't see it on a monitor, hear it, or feel it, he should send it to the psych ward. Your heart was stopped, Dr. Partee argued. Your brain didn't have any activity. You couldn't have seen anything. Your head was packed in ice. The patient, whom Partee referred to as the frozen man, simply described more details from his operation, including tools doctors had used and what they'd said during the surgery. Finally, Dr. Partee stopped him and gave him a shot of an antipsychotic drug. This almost happened to me. Rajiv Partee grew up in a Hindu family in India. He was taught to believe in the pantheon of Hindu gods and goddesses, but medical school training and his move from New Delhi to New York rooted out all belief of invisible gods or any afterlife. By his own admission, he worshipped at the altar of materialism. But all that changed the day after Christmas, 2010. Dr. Partee's entire world turned inside out, changing most of his views about God, the afterlife, and this life. The troubling encounter with the frozen man came rushing back to Dr. Partee when, at the age of 53, he found himself lying in the recovery room of the UCLA Medical Center, talking to an anesthesiologist about his own near-death experience. The anesthesiologist didn't believe Dr. Partee, or else he didn't care. I saw you during my surgery, Dr. Partee said. Really? The anesthesiologist retorted skeptically, his smile fading. Yes, I left my body and I watched you from the ceiling. Interesting, the doctor said as he fumbled through his papers, uninterested. No, really, Dr. Partee insisted, explaining how he watched the surgeon cut him open and even heard the anesthesiologist tell a joke. Oh, really? And what was the joke? Dr. Partee retold the crude joke about the smell after his intestines had been opened. The anesthesiologist blushed, mumbling that he must not have given him enough anesthesia. Dr. Partee reassured the anesthesiologist that he had given him plenty. As Dr. Partee told him about visiting his mom and sister in India, then finding himself on the edge of hell, the doctor became noticeably uncomfortable. He said he would come back to hear more of Dr. Partee's story, but he never did. And the anesthesiologist wasn't the only one to dismiss Dr. Partee's experience that day. When the surgeon came to visit, Dr. Partee recounted his out-of-body observations, his journey, and got all the way to the tunnel entrance before the surgeon reached for his phone and excused himself. This is so common. This is exactly what I experienced. I got a psych consult. When a resident physician came in, Dr. Partee peppered him with questions about healing of the soul. When Dr. Partee explained how two angels from the Bible took him to a being of light who discussed healing the soul, the resident quickly ended the conversation. Even though other doctors didn't believe him, Dr. Partee's own experience had transformed him from a skeptic to a believer of NDE accounts and of God. Skeptical about NDEs. I first learned about NDEs in 1978, 3 years after Dr. Raymond Moody put out the first popular research of people who clinically died, were resuscitated, and returned to tell of a life to come. My dad was dying of cancer, and a friend had given him Moody's book, Life After Life. I was skeptical at first, yet also curious. I was agnostic about God, Jesus, and the afterlife when I first read about NDEs. Yet I wanted to understand how things worked and how they all fit together. My curious analytical mind had led me to work in the field of engineering in Santa Barbara, California in the 80s. It was a decade when more and more accounts of NDEs were going public, and Santa Barbara turned out to be an epicenter of research. As I continued to encounter and study more NDEs, I had so many questions. What are these accounts? Are they actual scientific evidence for the soul and for God's existence? Or can NDEs be explained by natural means, like the effects of a dying brain or anoxia or drugs? Over the past 35 years, I've interviewed countless individuals and studied thousands of NDE reports trying to answer these questions. I've since become convinced that NDEs are God's gift to our world, evidence of God's great love for all people. That same evidence has also convinced many skeptical doctors over the years. Among them are cardiologists, oncologists, and surgeons who started out as skeptics, just like Dr. Partee, but later changed their minds due to overwhelming evidence, despite the alternate theories. Alternate explanations for NDEs. Over 30 alternate explanations for NDEs have been proposed over the years. Why so many? Oncologist Jeffrey Long, who went from NDE skeptic to researching over 4,000 NDEs, has debated skeptics such as Michael Shermer about alternate explanations. Dr. Long explains, skeptics themselves as a group can't come up with any consensus explanation of near-death experiences. If skeptics had one or even a couple of explanations that made sense, you wouldn't need over 30. They absolutely have nothing that explains the totality of what we're observing in a near-death experience. Lady Be Good says, I've been reading NDEs for so many years. I've heard this one many times. OCD, I guess. Moody risked his job when he wrote the book. That made me believe him. Interesting. I didn't know that. Thank you for that aside. Alternate explanations typically try to explain away one or two elements of an NDE, but they never take into account all common elements that together make a strong scientific case. Dr. Long contends, NDEs provide such powerful scientific evidence that it's reasonable to accept the existence of an afterlife. He points out a basic scientific principle. What is real is consistently observed. For that reason, rather than trying to explain what's missing in each of 30 different alternate explanations, a better approach is to focus on the evidence consistently observed by NDEers. A related scientific principle is that of Occam's razor, which states, of two competing theories, the simpler explanation of an entity is to be preferred. And the simplest explanation is almost universally given by NDEers themselves, who typically say, there is a soul. I left my body, but I was still myself, fully alive, in a world more real than anything I've experienced on earth. 10 points of evidence for life after death. There's an urban legend that says the government trains its agents to spot counterfeit bills by having them handle authentic bills. Once they know what real bills look and feel like, they can spot any fake bills because they're missing the evidential markings of the real thing. When it comes to NDEs, I take a similar approach. I want to help you see all the evidential marks that any valid theory must explain. To do that and to better understand the scientific case for life after death, let's take a closer look at 10 points of evidence. So Jeffrey Long runs a website, along with his wife Jody, I believe, called NDERF, Near Death Experience Research Foundation. And they have a page, or they at least used to have a page, that was exceptional near-death experiences. And mine is listed there. I think if you just look for Penny W, you can find it. And I've had some conversations with Dr. Long as well. I should meet him because he doesn't live, I think he's like in Ohio or Tennessee, somewhere close to me. Might see if I can work out an interview. Verifiable observations. Number 1. Like Dr. Partee, who heard the crude joke of the anesthesiologist, thousands of NDEers claim they left their bodies at the point of clinical death, yet their person or soul remained in the room observing their resuscitation. Dr. Long states, about 45% of near-death experiencers report OBEs, out-of-body experiences, which involves them seeing and often hearing ongoing earthly events from a perspective that is apart and usually above their physical bodies. Like Mary, who reported seeing the red sticker on the top side of the ceiling fan, many such observations have been documented and studied. Verifiable observations convinced Dr. Michael Sabam, a cardiologist and a Christian, who told me in an interview that he initially set out to disprove NDEs. He had never heard his patients tell such wild tales, but after 5 years of asking questions and openly listening to heart attack survivors, he published a 1980 scientific study of NDEs in the Journal of the American Medical Association. Since then, over 900 scholarly articles on NDEs have been published in many respected peer-reviewed journals. However, skeptics, such as Dr. Michael Shermer, claim NDEers are hallucinating the experience as the brain starts to function again. One of the things that convinced Dr. Sabam this could not be the case was how his patients saw details of their resuscitation that they could not otherwise have seen. If you guys remember in my story, I knew what drugs I was on. I could see the drips, the drip rates. I knew I was in an induced coma because I could see the drugs that were hanging on the IV pole while I was in a coma. Other skeptics, such as Dr. Gerald Worley, claim these NDEers are picking up audible clues that subconsciously form the experience. In response, Sabam talks about the case of Pam Reynolds, which for him disproves the theory. Dr. Sabam and Dr. Robert Spetzler, the neurosurgeon who operated on Pam's deep brain aneurysm, both reported the case. Pam was a well-known singer and songwriter in the recording industry in the 80s and 90s. Her studio recorded music by everyone from Bruce Springsteen to Pearl Jam and REM. Pam was a Christian at the time of her NDE. I was in Virginia Beach with my husband, Pam recalls. We were promoting a new record, and I inexplicably forgot how to talk. I've got a big mouth. I never forget how to talk. An MRI revealed an aneurysm, a ticking time bomb, deep in her brainstem. Her only hope was a radical experimental surgery. Like Dr. Partee's frozen man, Pam's body was cooled to about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and her head was drained of blood. Her eyes were taped shut, she was put under deep anesthesia, and her brainstem activity was monitored with 100 decibel clicks emitted from small molded speakers inserted into her ears. Her entire body, except for the small area of the head they were operating on, was covered completely, so there should have been no possibility of hearing, seeing, or picking up clues about events in the room. Pam had no heartbeat and no brainwave activity. Pam didn't recall the start of her surgery. I remember the top of my head tingling, and then I just sort of popped out of the top of my head, and I was then looking down at the body. It was an hour into the surgery, and she was looking down at her own body as if perched on her surgeon's shoulder. I remember the instrument in his hand looked like a handle of my electric toothbrush. I'd assumed they were going to open the skull with a saw, but what I saw looked a lot more like a drill. It even had little bits that were kept in this case that looked like the case my father stored his socket wrenches in. I remember distinctly hearing a female voice saying, "We have a problem. Her arteries are too small." The female voice came from down by her legs, Pam says, which confused her because it was brain surgery. but it turns out they had to access the femoral arteries in the legs. Dr. Spetzler later confirmed it was the female cardiac surgeon, Dr. Milken, who had that exact conversation with him. Pam said she had never met her, nor did she know a female surgeon would be among the doctors in the operating room that day. Spetzler emphasizes that it would have been impossible for a patient to see or hear anything at this point in the operation. Even if Pam had been conscious, the clicking modules in her ears would have prevented her from picking up conversations. In an MSNBC video, Dr. Spetzler shows the Midas Rex saw he used, which does look like an electric toothbrush with a long cord. He also shows the blades kept in a case that was opened during the surgery. It's pretty much what Pamela described in toothbrush form, and it's not something that's visible as you're coming into the operating room, Spetzler reflects, noting that the sterilized saw was not taken out until Pam was more than an hour into the deepest anesthetic state possible. After observing the operation, Pam says she sensed a presence and then noticed a tiny point of light which began drawing her to it. As she got closer, she recognized different people. "I distinctly heard my grandmother call me," Pam said, and I immediately went to her. "I saw behind my grandmother uncles, aunts, cousins, a good friend of mine who was murdered young, a distant cousin I didn't know had passed but had. I wanted to go into the light, but they stopped me. They communicated that if I continued to go into the light, I would change and would not be able to get back into my body. I know for a fact that God exists and permeates everything." Lady Be Good says their explanations to disprove NDEs are more convoluted and unbelievable than the simple idea that NDEs are real. That's a very good summary of Occam's razor, Lady Be Good. Well said. Eventually, Pam says she was told it was time to go back. As she returned to the operating room, she heard the surgeons playing Hotel California by the Eagles. She watched the doctors use the paddles to shock her, not once, but twice. When Pam revived, she reported back to the doctors what she had seen and heard, describing in minute detail the specialized instruments, the conversations, the song, and the 2 attempts to restart her heart. Doctors Sabam and Spetzler confirmed the accuracy of all the details, yet Pam had no brain waves. Her eyes had been taped shut, and she had 100 decibel clicking in her ears. Pam's story is one of many accounts that demonstrate the accuracy of NDE observations. Dr. Pim van Lommel, a Dutch cardiologist, began studying NDEs in 1986 after reading Dr. George Ritchie's account of dying and meeting a God of light he identified as Jesus. After studying thousands of NDE accounts, Van Lommel notes, "In this experience, people have veridical perceptions from a position outside and above their lifeless body." Veridical meaning something that you can verify. This out-of-body experience is scientifically important because doctors, nurses, and relatives can verify the reported perceptions. And any of you who know my story know that there were things that we were able to verify later on that I couldn't have seen because I was in a coma. Multiple studies have quantified the accuracy of NDE observations. One of those was a prospective study conducted by Dr. Penny Sartori. So Dr. Penny Sartori has a book called what is it called? It's called the something of near-death, the transformative power of near-death experiences. My story is in that book. I also ghost wrote a couple chapters and did the first round edits for that book. I don't know if it's still in print, but it used to be available on Amazon. Multiple studies have quantified the accuracy of NDE observations. I'm looking to make sure I didn't miss something. Yeah, here we go. One of those was a prospective study conducted by Dr. Penny Sartori, who followed 300 critical care patients in a Welsh hospital for a 5-year period. Sartori reports that those who had near-death experiences were remarkably accurate in describing details of their own resuscitation. The control group that did not have NDEs was highly inaccurate and often could only guess at what occurred during their resuscitations. We'll probably just read this first chapter, which is really long because my voice is a little weak, owing to the breathing tube I had a couple weeks ago. Dr. Janice Holden, a professor of psychology, studied 93 NDE patients who claimed to make verifiable observations. After investigating their claims in her retrospective study, here's what she found. 92% of these out-of-body perceptions were completely accurate. 6% contained some error, and less than 2% were completely erroneous. Reflecting on the overwhelming accuracy of NDE observations, Dr. Van Lommel notes, this strongly suggests that an NDE cannot be a hallucination, i.e., experiencing a perception that has no basis in reality. Like in psychosis, neither can it be a delusion nor an illusion, he adds. Moreover, one needs a functioning brain to experience a hallucination, an illusion, or a delusion. And interesting enough, they have documented flat brain activity. They'll also tell you that it's caused by lack of oxygen. I was on a ventilator. My oxygen levels were perfectly maintained while I was on the other side. Hold on, I think I missed a page. Oh my. Hold on, I did something. Your periods or Tori. There we go. Lady Be Good says the question might be out of place for this live stream, but have you ever heard of the soul trap hypothesis? I haven't, but hit me up on that at the end. The accuracy of these scientifically studied and verifiable observations provides strong evidence that grounds NDEs in reality. Alternate explanations do not account for the sheer volume or accuracy of real-world observations made by individuals during their NDEs. Number 2, common elements. Every NDE is unique, just as every individual life experience is unique. Yet, despite the uniqueness and cultural filters of each, NDE accounts from around the globe demonstrate a consistent order of common events. For instance, these include observing your resuscitation. I saw mine. Traveling through a tunnel or pathway. I did not have a tunnel per se, but I did travel toward a light. And a life review in the presence of a God of light and love, which I certainly had. Surveys in 35 countries indicate millions have had an NDE. Combine this sample size of millions with the prevalence of consistent elements, and you have strong evidence of a real life to come. Remember the scientific principle. What is real is consistently observed. And remember the scientific principle that my grandmother reminded me of when I was in heaven. She said, or whatever that place was, I don't think it's the heaven that you go to when you die forever, when your body's gone. I felt like I was kind of in an outside place, but still close. My grandmother said, you learn this. Energy isn't created or destroyed. It just changes form. That's true on the earthly realm, and it's true here. It's God's law borrowed by man. So that energy has to go somewhere. To familiarize you with the way NDEers typically describe their experience, I've put together a composite story representing the elements many positive NDEs have in common. I rose up out of my body and found myself up near the ceiling, watching the chaos below. I knew I was dead, and I watched as they tried to revive me. I was still myself and conscious. In fact, I felt even more alive, like I had 50 senses. Despite the chaos, I felt a profound peace. It was wonderful. I noticed a tunnel or pathway opening up above me, and I found myself traveling at great speed. I came out into a world of beauty, not unlike that of Earth, yet so much more. The grass was greener, the flowers more vibrant, the mountains more majestic. Just so for anybody who doesn't know, I have never read anyone else's near-death experience because I've not wanted to dilute mine. but I feel like mine's solid enough. I have enough of it written that I can do that now. But it's just, I'm experiencing this book with you and remembering as they're telling the things that I saw. So if I get emotional, that's why. The grass was greener, the flowers more vibrant, the mountains more majestic, and all of them were radiating vibrant, new colors beyond Earth's color spectrum. And the light was not like light on Earth. It was palpable. The light conveyed life and love, and it didn't shine on things like on Earth, but it radiated out of everything, yes, out of the grass, the leaves, the birds, and even out of the people, yes. I looked, and coming toward me was a welcoming committee of people I loved and knew. My grandmother and grandfather, friends and family members who had all died before me. They all looked in their prime, but fully recognizable. It was a glorious reunion as we hugged and kissed. Our communication was pure like telepathy, but so much more, yes. All thoughts, feelings, and understanding were passing perfectly between us. Nothing was rushed. There was no concept of time, or time worked differently. Yes, I would agree with that. Then I saw a light, brighter than the sun, but easy to look at, yes. I knew this was God. He knew all my thoughts, all my good and bad deeds, and yet I felt an overwhelming, unconditional love and acceptance in his presence. On the other side, you understand things at light speed, and as fast as I could ask a question, my mind had the answer. In God's presence, I watched a 3D panoramic review of my life. I don't know how it was possible, but I re-experienced every scene. I not only experienced my own thoughts and feelings, but also how my actions affected other people. God was showing me what mattered most, how I loved and treated those around me. There was a border or boundary I knew I could not cross and still return to Earth. I desperately wanted to stay, but God told me it was not my time. In my case, I got to decide. I still had purpose to fulfill on Earth. When I returned, my life was changed. That is the best sentence so far. When I returned, my life was changed. That's how you can kind of verify for yourself some of these NDEs, because not everybody's telling the truth. And I know who some of them are, I won't say. But a changed life. If a person is telling you they had this experience and they don't have a changed life, I would be skeptical. Based on Dr. Jeffrey Long's statistical study, as well as my own research, I've summarized the consistent elements of NDEs and their prevalence in the list below. 75% had an out-of-body or new-body experience. 57% saw deceased family, friends, or angels. 45% had evidential observations, things that could be proved. 45% had telepathic communication or different hearing. Mine was telepathic. 74% had heightened consciousness and senses, yes, for sure. 48% God of light and love, yes. 76% said they had peaceful, positive feelings. 56% said they had special knowledge. I know for a fact that God showed me the knowledge of the universe. And as it was being unfolded, I could feel the neurons in my brain lighting up. I could feel the knowledge going across the synapses in my brain. And I knew, it's like, you know how when you try to remember a dream and it starts slipping away, and the harder you try to remember it, the faster it goes? That's what that universal knowledge was like. I had it, and then it just slipped and slipped and slipped, and I couldn't hold on to it. I knew I wouldn't be allowed to remember it. 34% saw a tunnel. Lady Be Good says, I've seen that too, but was not allowed to remember it. I've heard that from a lot of people. 32% had a life review. 52% saw heavenly realms, just what I would describe. 31% border or boundary. Yes, my boundary was at my DNA. Increased visual perception, 66%. Yes, I could see the vibration of the flowers. I could see the song that each flower was singing. They were singing different songs. I could see the fragrance of the flower. It was just crazy. I could hear the smell. Does that even make sense? It's like, is that called anosmia, where you where you can experience things. Is that what that's called? I think that's what that's called. Um, Increased visual perception, 66%. Told to return or choice to return, 59%. Light that is love, 65%. Profound life change, 73%. Oh, Lady Be Good didn't have an NDE, but probably a spiritually transformative event, which is a lot like an NDE. Alternate theories need to explain why millions of people report so many similar elements. If NDEs are merely the activity of a dying brain, my brain was not dying, why are they not all precisely identical? Why is each experience unique yet also consistent with the pattern of common elements? No alternate theory has accounted for such a high degree of common claims, such as telepathic communication, light that is love, telescopic vision. Yes, that was so cool. I could see 360 degrees all around me just by wanting to see that, or I could block it out. Things uncommon in our earthly lives. The combination of uniqueness and commonality in NDE accounts resembles the best kind of testimony in a court of law. If 10 eyewitnesses all say exactly the same thing, it would appear to be collusion, that they talked and agreed on a story. But if 10 eyewitnesses give unique but overlapping observations on an event, that's incredibly strong testimony. And that's what we see with NDEers. 3. Heightened lucidity, for sure. In a study of 613 NDEs, approximately 74% indicated a heightened consciousness, more real and lucid than normal. A woman whose severe sickness caused an NDE at age 5 said, "The man, her name for God, and I walked and talked together. The colors were very vivid, not even as you can see colors in this world. I don't know, I can't describe it, but they were very vivid, very bright." Yeah, there was yellow, there was green, there were all the colors, but they were so much more vivid than they are here, and they didn't stay to the plant itself. So like if there was a flower and it had pink petals, the petals put off this kind of pink energy, and the green part put off a green energy, and they were both singing this song and all of them were singing this different song, but it wasn't a cacophony. It all was like symphonic. It was beautiful. Crazy, crazy hard to describe. This was 12 years ago. I'm so sorry, Lady Be Good. We'll get you through it. These things are hard. I know a lot of people who've had out-of-body experiences or near-death experiences or spiritually transformative events, and it messes up your head. I was messed up for a long time. I was not myself, because it took me so long to sort through this. Hold on, I've got to turn this TENS unit on because I'm starting to hurt. And it really helps, actually. Whoa, Lordy, that's a going. Can't do the fun on above my incision quite so high. Oh, let's go down. Sorry, I hate to be doing that in real time, but I got to do it. Years and even decades later, NDEers consistently say their experience was more vivid, more real than anything they had experienced on Earth. And this sets NDEs apart from other kinds of altered experience. Dr. Jeffrey Long points out, in any other altered type of human consciousness, dreams, hallucinations, psychotic events, you typically have confused sensorium, exactly. Experiences may skip around in dreams. You really have that hypo or decreased lucidity, and that's completely different in near-death experiences, which are hyper or increased lucid experiences. And near-death experiences flow, and they tend to be very logical and ordered. Right. In my patients who have had like psychotic episodes in the ICU, you see it a lot. We call it ICU psychosis. Those are very confusing, scary experiences that don't make sense, that are very disjointed, and the memory of those goes away over time. The memory of my near-death experience only gets stronger with time, which is very different than, say, a dream, right? Which would be similar to hallucinations, that sort of thing. Alternate theories must explain how a dying brain with no electrical activity could produce heightened awareness, more vivid sights, and memories more real than what NDEers experience on Earth. The simplest explanation: the soul lives on in a world of expanded dimensional experience. Number 4, consistency, with or without anesthesia. Many alternate theories posit that anesthesia or other drugs might be the cause of NDEs. Dr. Pim van Lommel and 2 other Dutch psychologists conducted a 5-year prospective study in 10 hospitals across Holland. They followed 344 patients who had had heart attacks that resulted in a flat EEG, so electroencephalogram. They're measuring brain waves. Resulted in flat EEG, not EKG. They reported their findings in Europe's most prestigious medical journal, The Lancet, and in the Journal of Consciousness Studies. Between 1988 and 1992, 344 successive patients who had undergone a total of 509 successful resuscitations were included in the study. In other words, all the patients in our study had been clinically dead. Clinical death is defined as the period of unconsciousness caused by total lack of oxygen in the brain because of the arrest of circulation. So my cause of my NDE was respiratory arrest. Our study found that 18% of the 344 patients reported an NDE. All the familiar elements of an NDE were reported in our study, with the exception of a frightening or negative NDE. We failed to identify any differences between the patients with a very long or very brief cardiac arrest. The degree or gravity of the lack of oxygen in the brain, anoxia, appeared to be irrelevant. Likewise, it was established that medication played no role. We were particularly surprised to find no medical explanation for the occurrence of an NDE. If there was a physiological explanation, such as a lack of oxygen in the brain, anoxia, for the occurrence of this enhanced consciousness, one might have expected all patients in our study to have reported an NDE. Indeed. So medication or lack of oxygen to the brain, sometimes referred to as fighter pilot syndrome, does not explain an NDE. Drugs like DMT, LSD, or ayahuasca that supposedly reproduce a few NDE-like symptoms, tunnel vision, colors, connectedness, in no way make sense of the 4 points of evidence presented so far, much less explain the next point, which is how the blind can see. Number 5, the blind can see. Kenneth Ring, a former professor of psychology at the University of Connecticut, conducted a study on NDEs. I feel like I've talked to Kenneth Ring. Conducted a study of NDEs on blind people. 14 were congenitally blind, meaning they had been blind from birth and had no visual or light perception at all. Yet in their NDE, Ring found not only could the blind see, but they described all the commonalities of sighted NDEers. Ring described an interview with Debbie, a 48-year-old woman who lost her sight at birth. She was home recuperating from a severe burn injury when she felt like she was dying and fell unconscious on the bathroom floor. Debbie recalls, "I saw this beautiful light and it was different colors. It was, what can I say? Colors I couldn't even begin to describe. It was fantastic." Looking down from above, Debbie could also see her body lying on the floor and her mother bending over her. Ring summarizes Debbie's description of what happened next. A being presents himself, comforts her, and helps her to cross over a bridge. She sees other people, including her deceased grandmother, who introduces herself to Debbie and who shows her some of her friends and ancestors. She soon encounters another presence whom she understands is God and begins to plead to be able to stay. God imparts a great deal of information to Debbie concerning future events, including the person she would marry and that she would have a beautiful baby girl, both of which have come true, and tells her that she will have to teach people when she returns to life. The following excerpts from Debbie's interview highlight the visual observations made while up above her body, watching her mom try to revive her and simultaneously seeing her deceased grandparents who had come to be with her. Remember, Debbie is blind. Interviewer: what do you mean when you say you saw in stereo? Oh, that's brilliant. That's a great description. Debbie: well, I'd see two different things at once. I'd see me lying on the floor, and then I'd see my deceased grandparents. Then I'd see my ma bending over me and my grandparents at the same time. Interviewer: was this the first time that you had visually seen your mother? Debbie: oh, yeah. Interviewer: could you describe your mother? Debbie: oh, gee. My ma had gray hair. She was short, about just 5 feet, and she was in her bathrobe. And I told her she was in her bathrobe, and she said, that's right, I was. Interviewer: did you see the color of her bathrobe as well? Debbie: I thought it was a dark color, and I think she said, yeah, it was black. Interviewer: did you see yourself for the first time as well? Debbie: I saw this thin girl, maybe brown hair with maybe a little bit of gray, beginning to gray, and quite young, and no wrinkles or anything. And I knew it was me, and I had never seen my grandma either as a young woman or an old woman. But she had brown hair, and my ma said, yeah, she had brown hair, and she was a young woman in the NDE, and I would guess her to be no more than 30. Nobody seemed old there. True, everybody seemed in their 30s there. Interviewer: did you recognize anyone else? Debbie: oh, yeah, this girlfriend I had who died of nephritis, Darlene. I recognized her right away. She said, hi, Debbie. I said, oh, Darlene. It was just like her voice. She was thin, and when she was on Earth, she wasn't thin. She had a thyroid problem. She had nephritis, which would swell her up. She had a lot of other people and kids made fun of her when she was little. They called her little fatty and stuff like that. The fact that multiple blind people can see and report the same commonalities as sighted NDEers cannot be explained by the effects of a dying brain, drugs, chemicals, or any other alternate explanation proposed so far. The simpler explanation remains: there is life after life. Meeting deceased people not previously known, number 6. In recounting their NDEs, children sometimes describe meeting siblings who had died before they were born. Their parents had not told them about a miscarriage or a tragic death of a sibling, yet the parents verify what their children report about a deceased brother or sister they met during their NDE. Adults also report similar encounters. Dr. Pim Van Lommel published one woman's compelling story of meeting a relative she had not previously known. During my cardiac arrest, I had an extensive experience, and later I saw, apart from my deceased grandmother, a man who had looked at me lovingly, but whom I did not know. More than 10 years later, at my mother's deathbed, she confessed to me that I had been born out of an extramarital relationship, and my mother showed me his picture. The unknown man that I had seen more than 10 years before during my NDE turned out to be my biological father. This is one example among many where a person meets someone in their NDE whom they had not previously known or even known about. How could meeting a deceased, previously unknown sibling or relative be explained by purely brain-based alternate theories? Knowledge beyond the body, number 7. Dr. Rajiv Parthi claimed that while his physical body was in Los Angeles, he traveled to New Delhi, India, and saw his mother and sister. Yes, my physical body was in Kentucky, and I traveled to Wisconsin, to where my sister was driving to me. They were sitting in the lounge there, and it was evening time. My mom was wearing a green sari and a green sweater, and my sister was wearing blue jeans and a red sweater, which, after 2 or 3 days of me getting better, I called and verified. Many NDEers make such claims of traveling while in their spiritual bodies, and when those claims can be verified, it provides even more evidence supporting the soul living on after death. So, like, I saw my sister sitting in the waiting room, a waiting room I'd never been in that hospital, with my son. Her purse was between them, and they were talking about how I didn't have a living will and had never made my wishes known as to how long I'd want to be kept alive on life support. and my sister had blue Kleenex in her purse. She got a blue Kleenex out of her purse. And so there was 2 seats. They were sitting together. The purse was between them. There was 2 seats on the other side to the right of my son, and then a short wall, and then a bathroom on the other side of that wall. And that was all verified. Trisha Barker, who I know, she was in the Dr. Penny Sartori's book as well, had a head-on collision in her car as she was on her way to run a 10K race in Austin, Texas. Because she was a college student without insurance, it took 17 hours to find a surgeon to operate on her. Having been in horrendous pain, she flatlined as soon as the anesthesiologist put the mask on her. At the time, I was agnostic, Trisha says, and so I was shocked, the spirit goes on. I wanted to pop back in my body, wake up, and tell all my friends, hey, we do go on. She saw her own body on the operating table with her back opened up and blood everywhere. Then she noticed the flatlined monitor. Disturbed at seeing her mangled body, she didn't want to view the scene any longer, and with that thought, she was out in the hallway of the hospital. I saw my stepfather, a health nut who would never touch sweets, getting a candy bar from a vending machine in the hallway of the hospital and eating it. After reviving, she told her stepfather what she'd witnessed. He was shocked, but admitted his indulgence, explaining he was nervous about Trisha's surgery. Another NDEer described how she left her body, went into the hospital waiting room, and heard her brother-in-law say, "It looks like June is going to kick the bucket, so I better stay around and be a pallbearer." Wow. Can you imagine how he felt when she later told him she was there listening? These cases create yet another source of powerful evidence that alternative explanations must address. Coffin 556, welcome. Number 8, memory retention. Dr. Van Lommel notes the prevailing medical paradigm holds that memories and consciousness are produced by large groups of neurons or neural networks. He points out that 10 to 20 seconds after a heart attack, brain waves cease, resulting in a flat EEG, not EKG, EEG, brain waves, an indication that there is no electrical activity. In his study, all 344 patients had no brain activity, yet 18% reported memories of an NDE. The question then is this: is there no soul that houses our consciousness? How are all the NDE memories retained in neural networks? They're not. In other words, when the machine stops and there's no electrical brain activity, where are these memories stored? No alternate explanations have answered this question, and that's because our consciousness is not in our brain. And I don't know how to explain that, except to say that we have access to it. We can access our consciousness with our brain. We can also access it with our spirit if we're out of our body. So there's that. That was definitely an experience that I had, and I understand that. And there's actually been some interesting studies on collective consciousness and how intentionality of a group of people can change energy fields and things like that. Really interesting work. Hi, Marie. The question then is this. Oh, I already got that. Dr. Sam Parnia and Peter Fenwick conducted a British prospective study which included 63 patients who survived their cardiac arrest. They note complex experiences as reported in the NDE should not arise or be retained in memory because you've got no brain activity. How am I remembering something when I was in respiratory arrest, not on the ventilator, but I'm in respiratory arrest? And I can tell you who came into the room, the whole thing. Such patients would be expected to have no subjective experience, yet they do, and the memories are vivid and consistent. Number 9, life change. This is the big one. It's funny, everybody wants to hear about the near-death experience. I found the near-death experience to be incredible. But the life change has been so profound, so profound. Numerous studies have followed the after effects of an NDE. If an NDE is not a real experience of a life to come, why would it change people's lives and perspectives so drastically? In the Dutch study of 344 cardiac arrest patients, the experiences of a control group who did not report NDEs were compared to those who did report NDEs. Researchers interviewed all 344 patients 2 years after their cardiac arrest, and then again 8 years later. Here's what they found. We were surprised to find that the processes of transformation that had begun in people with NDE after 2 years had clearly intensified after 8 years. The people who had experienced an NDE during their cardiac arrest continued to be clearly different, and my husband would testify to that. In particular, they were less afraid of death and had a stronger belief in an afterlife. And I tend not to get so worked up about everything that's going on in the world, because even if I die, if you die, we go on and in a much better place. And I know that's really scary to a lot of people. Fear of death is one of the most common fears, but there's no need for it. We saw in them a greater interest in spirituality and questions about the purpose of life, as well as a greater acceptance of and love for oneself and others. Likewise, they displayed a greater appreciation of ordinary things, yes, whereas their interest in possessions and power had decreased. It is quite remarkable to see a cardiac arrest lasting just a few minutes give rise to such a lifelong process of transformation. One of the things that I've really noticed is how much joy I can take in other people's joy. Like before, I would feel kind of jealous about it. Why is my life such a mess and theirs is so good? Well, I was watching Dan Bongino yesterday, I think. Yesterday or the day before. And he was talking about how close he was to 3 million subscribers. And that man works so hard. I mean, he does a show every day. I do 2 shows a week. He works really hard. He deserves his success. And so they kept refreshing the page to see how many subscribers he had. And he hit 3 million during the podcast. And I was on my feet in tears clapping. And I'm like, way to go, Dan. I mean, it just touched my heart so much because he has a real love for his audience. And I really respect that because I feel the same way. This isn't an audience. This is family. And he feels that way too. And so I just was rejoicing with family in that moment with him. And it's true joy, whereas before I might have thought, well, why don't I have 3 million people on my podcast? I mean, I simply know it's because I don't work as hard. It's just true. I imagine if I worked every day and put out podcasts all the time and was active on all the social media sites, I would have a bunch more people. But I like this pace, and I just was overwhelmed and totally enveloped in Dan's success and his joy. And it was pure. And that is something that is a transformation for me, just to give you an idea. Cardiac arrest patients who do not have NDEs do not consistently experience the same long-term life transformation as those who do have NDEs. An alternate explanation would need to show why NDEs consistently cause dramatic spiritual life changes. Number 10. The same God across cultures. This one is fascinating. NDEers come from vastly different cultures, religious backgrounds, and belief systems, yet they encounter the same God of light and love. I believe this is profound, and this is especially interesting in Howard Storm's case because Howard Storm had initially a hellish near-death experience. He describes himself as an angry atheist, and that man is now an Episcopal priest. Or preacher, I'm not sure what they call themselves. I believe this is profound evidence not only of a life to come, but also of God's reality and identity. No alternative theories account for this or explain how people who did not believe God existed encountered the same God as those who did. And this is what makes me ask this question. So I'll have a lot of people will ask me, they'll say, well, my sister died and didn't believe in God. And so now she's in hell. I'm not so sure about that. I can't find anything in the Bible, and I'm sure I'm going to get a beat down for this. I can't find anything in the Bible that says that you must come to know Jesus as your Savior before you leave your physical body. I think we assume that because we think that we're dead at the physical body end, but we're not. And so I think we have all just assumed, oh, well, you have to do it before you die because once you die, you can't make any choices. Well, that's not so. And Howard Storm proves that. Howard Storm was an angry, horrible atheist, and I mean, by his own admission. And he knew when the demons were tearing him apart that he needed to cry out to Jesus. And all he could remember was, I think I've got this right. If I don't, you guys let me know. But all he could remember was like a Christian song, like Jesus loves me, yes I know, like a little Bible song you would sing as children. And he started singing that song or a song like it and was saved, was rescued. So he was able to acknowledge Christ and the truth of Christ once he was out of his body in that near-death experience realm and be saved. So I'm not saying that's the case. I'm not a Bible scholar, just something to think about. I think we've got very black and white ideas about things that we don't know very much about. Jang Jaswal did not believe in gods, or an afterlife. As a science-minded atheist and engineer, he spent much time and effort trying to convince his family, friends, and coworkers of the lunacy of their beliefs in God. This is always interesting to me. People who don't believe in God, who are obsessed with trying to convince other people that God doesn't exist. We don't see this with other things that we all acknowledge as fantasy. So just think of this time of year. You would not get into an argument with any other adult this time of year about the existence of magical things, right? Because you know what you know, and you don't see any reason to argue about it. This is what makes me think that atheists don't really believe what they say they believe, because they have this need to argue and force other people to believe it. And if you're solid in something, you don't really need to do that. It's like they're trying to convince themselves. Jang clinically died during a 12-hour heart and kidney transplant. He found himself in a lush green valley looking across at an extremely bright light. Telepathically, a superior intelligence communicated, "You think you're the center of the universe and are a very important person, and you control everything, but you are not the center of everything. Let me show you the center of the universe." Zhang realized God was addressing his arrogance of dogmatically telling people there was no God. "I saw Earth spinning on its axis, and I saw whole galaxies going by. Then I realized how insignificant I am in the bigger picture of things. After that, the light started moving toward where I was, and pretty soon, the light was shining on top of me, like rays were falling on me. This light was the best experience I had ever had in my life. This light was of golden white color. This communication came to me, telling me that it's not your time. It's time for you to go back now. It was so peaceful of an experience, so blissful. I never understood the meaning of bliss before until I experienced this light." Amen. Zhang came back seeking spiritual understanding and believing very differently than he had before his NDE. How would an alternate theory account for the NDEs of so many people of radically different religious and cultural beliefs, all describing the same God? The simple truth: there will always be people who struggle to believe that God or an afterlife exists, but the evidence is there. New alternate theories will probably continue to be proposed. However, for any alternate theory to stand, it must coherently explain these 10 points of evidence. Science looks for the simplest explanation of consistently observed data, and the simplest explanation is this: every human being has a soul that lives on after death in a world overseen by a God of light and love. We now have 40 years of impressive scientific research validating NDEs. But what does this mean for us today? If there is a God, has that God given evidence of his existence only through modern NDEs? Or are there clues in history that point to the same God? As compelling as NDE evidence can be, I've found God's history even more persuasive. And we're going to stop there. These chapters are long. That'll get us to chapter 3. So I'm going to close that and take us back to the screen. I can't read for hours. I'm not there yet, but I'm trying. If you came into the chat late, welcome. I hope you're enjoying the book. We are reading Pastor John Burke's book, Imagine the God of Heaven. My story features in chapter 11. It may be somewhere else too. I don't know. I just know. I think it's just in 11 because I did a search in Kindle to find my name, and that's where I found it. So we have a while till we get there. But you guys know my story, so I don't know that that'll be such a big thrill. But there'll be other people in there that I know of, and I'm excited to read their stories. Oh, thank you, Coffin. Coffin's been waiting to see new videos. Says it's great to see me. Yeah, I had surgery. I was 2 weeks post-op. And so I had the surgery. It went well. I had a bike wreck if you got here late. I got an electric bike because I wanted to try it. I've wanted one for years because I have a bad knee and I need some assist up these Kentucky hills. And I rented one to see if I would like it before buying one or before asking for one for Christmas. And I got out on it the first day. The guy that brought it didn't know anything about it. And so I got out on the sidewalk and I felt like it was too tight to learn. Oh, you're welcome, Marie. And I felt like the sidewalk was too tight, like I should go to the street. That might be a little safer for me. And so I turned the bike to go to the street and I didn't realize that it has a throttle. And so I hit that throttle and the bike's 60 pounds and I couldn't wrestle it and it took off and it knocked me to the ground and I took a handlebar like an inch above my incision very hard. And so that's why I'm still struggling. I would have been fine today if not for the bike accident, but I'm getting through it. I'm a little beat up. Faith Pagioli. What a beautiful name. Is that Polish? Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed the live stream, sweetheart. That's awesome. I love seeing you guys in the chat. I've missed you so much. Marie Fries, is there a theory based on reincarnation and the idea that Earth is a prison, that possibly our time in the afterlife is a hoodwink to get us to come down here again? I'll feel the bad energy. That is not a theory that I'm unfamiliar with. Bad energy to those that make life miserable down here and control us. Found a round trip in March for $360. Wow, that's a good price. Okay, I may have to put some donations toward that. That's exciting. So my theories on reincarnation. I don't know if it's true or not. I did experience what seemed to me, and my husband has asked me not to talk about this, but I just can't. What I saw to me looked like me in past lives. Here's my only issue with it. At one point, God paired me up with another person and I saw their life. And because we're so connected spiritually, which you don't really see here because we put up artificial barriers and society does as well. But there we're really, really connected. You can feel like if something hurt you while I was there, I would be able to feel it and it would really hurt me too. So while I was experiencing this other person's life, it felt very much like it was happening to me. And I had a very hard time discerning what was happening to her versus was this happening to me? And was this me that I was seeing? So that's very enmeshed. And that was hard for me to tell apart. And I'm the only person I've ever heard say that. And I've talked to other people, done interviews and stuff, and who interview NDEers. And they've said the same thing, that I'm the only person they've heard that has that particular theory. And the thing is, I just don't know. So what I saw was a couple of different lives for me. I saw me in this life where I was a grown woman, probably under 30, and I was traveling this road somewhere in South America with my father, who is my father in this life. And there was this outcropping of rock over this road, and kind of like a carport made of rock or something, right? But it kind of went back into this rocky mountain. And it wasn't super tall, maybe 20 feet over our heads. But we heard this rumbling, and there was a woman walking with 3 kids up the road toward us. 3 kids, probably all under 10. And they yelled something that in their own tongue, which sounded like Spanish or Portuguese to me. But I understood them, that we needed to get cover. We needed to get under the rock. And so my dad and I start running, and my dad runs all the way to the back of this cave. And or it's kind of cave-like as it goes back in. So my dad runs back in there, and as he does, there's this loud explosion. I see rocks go flying everywhere, and the back part of the cave collapses. And my dad is trapped in there, and I'm trapped under part of the dirt. And and I'm trying to get to my dad to get him out, and I couldn't get him out, and he died. And there are these, so I dig my way out. I get out, and there's these three little children, and I'm talking to them in their tongue. Are you okay? Are you okay? And they're scared, but they're okay. And this woman, um, says that these explosions have got to stop. This company's got to stop doing this. And so I walk up into town, and I'm very fretful because I've lost my dad. I can't get him out. But it's like I just move on from that, and I go up into this village, and there's livestock. It's pretty not advanced, like outhouses, things like that sort of thing. Longer ago than that, probably. Like there was no indoor plumbing, there was no electricity that I could perceive in this village where these people lived. And they were talking. I was telling them, that I'd lost my dad and he was in there and we needed to go get him. And I was just so upset and really scared. And they were telling me that there's this mining company that's mining copper. And they're doing these explosions to mine this copper. And when they do these explosions, the rocks go flying everywhere, and livestock had been killed and people had been killed. And that this was very distressful for them, but this company wouldn't do anything about it. And they had put up this kind of makeshift fence supposedly to stop the rocks, but it only would stop rocks that were going along the ground and not ones that were flying through the air. And so I decided to go to where this copper mining facility was and to see what was going on there. So I climb this fence and I go and I'm walking around. I'm being sneaky about it. And I can see, and I didn't know anything about mining until I saw this. I could see all of these like wooden tables that were up off the ground, probably about the height of, my belly button. I'm 5'2". And this rock went across this table, and the table kind of like shook it, and there were people by the table, and it would feed up into this sort of building that had a big opening on one side. And so I'm out there poking around, and these two men come out, and they're very threatening, and they tell me that I need to get out of there. And I'm like, look, this explosion collapsed this cave that we were hiding under, this rock formation, and my dad's dead, and you're hurting these people, and all it seems like always in these lives that I see, I'm always fighting some sort of injustice. And I'm like, you've got to stop doing this. There's got to be a safer way. And so they threatened me, and I knew I needed to leave or I was going to get hurt. Well, I wanted to see more of the operation, and there was a rock formation off to the left of the camp, and I decided to climb it. And I was a very good climber. So I was able to get up to the top, but when I got to the top, my foot slipped and I fell and I died. So there's that one. Then there's another one where I am living in Greece with my grandmother, and she had left Russia. There was some kind of civil war, and she'd left Russia for Greece, fled, and so had my parents. And apparently there was a civil war in Russia where people did flee to Greece, which I didn't know anything about until after. And I was staying with my grandmother because my father was a tailor and my mother was a seamstress. And I don't know who they were. I don't have a picture of them, but they had gone on a cart pulled by horses to make funeral attire for the son of some people who were higher up who had passed away. And so in their journey to go to make this funeral wardrobe for this boy, like teenage boy, 14 or so, who had died, their cart went off the edge of this road that was very steep, and they died. And so I was living with my grandmother. And my grandmother worked at this farm where she collected olives and different things, different produce that was grown on the property. And she would bring it into town. Her job was to bring it into town and sell it, and then they would pay her. And so she would bring it in what looked like wooden wheelbarrows, very and she had a little table she would set up, and there was a little cloth that went over the table to like shield her head. And I remembered I was supposed to keep this little bonnet on. I had this little head cover, but I was a tomboy and I wouldn't do it. And so I would be running, and I was 7 or 8. I'd be running, racing the boys in the village and my bonnet would be tied around my neck, but flapping behind me. And I was, faster than the boys and challenging them and all this stuff. And I had dark hair in braids on either side of my head. I had this olive complexion, like I was Greek, or Russian. And, um, and so I was running around, and I remember the women in the village were sitting on the porches, and they were talking about how I was not a proper little girl and that I should keep my bonnet on and I should be helping my grandmother, but I was just terrorizing the place. And we lived in this little dwelling that was white, that was attached to other dwellings. Like it was all made of some sort of rock or something that was all together, almost like they had carved it out or something. It was really weird. And it had a window, no screen or anything. And then when you walked into the dwelling, there was one little mattress on the floor that looked to be made up of straw, but it had fabric blankets on it. And then in the corner, there was a little table with 2 chairs, and there was a little wood-burning stove, and there was a basin for water. And that's all I remember being in the room, and I knew that I'd slept with my grandmother in that bed. And that's all I remember of that life. I didn't die or anything. And then the other one is much older, and this is probably during biblical times. And I was in this village, and there were some women in the village whose husbands were beating them, for being sassy or whatever. This was just that kind of time when you could physically discipline your wife. And I was telling them, I'm like, it's one thing to offer discipline. It's another thing to beat you. And, we shouldn't have to take that. And, we should take care of each other. And like, if you can't stay with your husband because he's beating you, you should be welcome to stay with me and I could help you. And this was radical talk. This was radical talk, stuff that I knew I shouldn't be saying. And we were kind of having these conversations in secret amongst us women. And somehow somebody found out that I was talking about this. And so they took me to this part of town. The buildings were made of stone. The ground was all dirt. And I've yet to be able to find this thing. So I get there, they put me on this platform, and they tie each of my limbs to a horse. And like maybe 30 feet away from this platform is another platform. And there's 2 upright pieces of wood, and they've got like pulleys on them, and there's rope. So like beams are up, and there's the pulleys and the rope, and there is a piece of wood that's got 4 pieces of rope coming up from each corner, so like pulling it up like a sandwich, right? And then there's a platform. And what they do is there's people, and they stand and they pull on those ropes, and they pull that board up, because when the crowd is there, it's so quiet and the horses can't hear when they're told to run. And so what they do is they frighten the horses. And so they pull this board up, and they let it go, and it hits that platform, and it makes this loud clap, this thunderous clap. And then the horses take off and they pull you apart. So the horses take off, they pull me apart, and I'm suspended in the air, and light is coming out of my arms and my legs. And the whole crowd is like freaking out. And God said to me during that vision, he said, you don't always have to fight. Fighting isn't always the way to stop injustice. There are other ways. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. Like until that moment, until I saw that vision, I didn't know that there was other, hostility, that there's other ways to make positive change without being hostile, and to control my hostility when I see injustice toward other people, because that's my one bugaboo. So there's that. Not a proper little girl. I'm sensing theme in these lives, Penny, right? Yeah, and that was the thing, was there was this kind of unifying theme of me taking the bull by the horns, me taking control of things, me trying to change everything, instead of me harnessing the power that is God and using that as fuel to try to correct injustice, which is what I do now. Rather than go after people verbally or whatever, I try to change hearts instead. And I realize not everybody's ready for that change. So what was interesting was I knew about that memory, and I had gone to this conference in California with a friend of mine who does these like regressions, if you've never seen a regression. And we figured it would just be one of these. Sorry, I'm turning my TENS unit back on. We figured it would just be one of these. Whoa, more. That's a little high. Sorry. I figured it would just be, my life is the little Greek girl. But it wasn't. It was that one. And I experienced that all over again in front of this group of people, which was very traumatizing for them. I was okay, but they were really traumatized by it. So there's that. And like I said, I don't know what that was. I don't know if that's just a vision that God gave me to teach me a greater lesson, or if that is really a past life. There's so much controversy about that. And that's why Don doesn't like me to discuss it, because he's like, oh, I don't want our Christian friends to hear that and think that you believe in that. And I'm like, okay, it's just a personal experience. It doesn't have to have any reality to it. It can just be a vision. It can be anything. So maybe after this life, you won't have to do it again. I think we want to do it again. So there's your trapped theory. I don't think we're trapped. I think that our spirit that is eternal is way more optimistic about what we can get through than we are. And I think we go back up there, and you can choose to come back or not, if this is the case. I don't know if it is. If you can choose to come back or not, I came back into this body. Is that not reincarnation of a type? I was dead and I came back. You've got people who were dead 40 minutes that came back. Do I think it's beyond God to recycle us and allow us to? I think the Spirit says, I want to go back. I want to experience this thing, because this is how I explain it. I can tell you how cold a Michigan winter is, right? And I can tell you what it feels like to stand out on the ice naked on Lake Michigan or Lake Superior, right? And I could probably tell the story well enough that you'd even feel a little bit cold. You'd get into it, That is not the same as standing naked on the ice. There's no experience. There's no words that I could give you that will give you that experience. And so I think that as our spirits get, if this is a true thing, I think our spirits want more challenges as we go. We're trying to achieve higher levels of understanding. We're trying to understand depths of depravity. We're trying to understand heights of godliness. And the only way to come back to do that is to come back to life and the troubles it has. And I think our spirit is like, I want to do it again. I want to experience this. I want to understand patience more. I want to understand how it feels to love somebody so deeply and then to lose them, to give me compassion for other people. That's my goal, is to learn compassion. So I come back and I have a bunch of really tough, I'm thinking maybe that's my life's journey, is to learn compassion, because I come back and I've had so much suffering. Before this, after the NDE, I have a completely different spin on it now, of course, since I've had a near-death experience. But I think I just have so much compassion for people now that I didn't have before. And I understand suffering in a way I couldn't have understood it before. And I think I'm able to provide help in a way that I couldn't have before. And I think my spirit knew I had that in me. And it's like, go back, go back, go back. We want you to refine this skill. But I could be totally wrong. And, biblical people will argue with me, and I can't tell them that they're wrong. I don't know. So maybe after this life, you don't have to do it again. You don't have to do it again. We decide to do it again. Our spirits do. Blame your spirit if you're still here. It's their fault. I am a Xian. What is that? And I'm okay with your stories. Oh, you're a Christian. I can see coming back to grow in love. Yeah. Love, compassion, wisdom. I wonder, child prodigies would be very well explained by past lives. There's a 2-year-old on YouTube that can play piano and has been able to play it since he was a year old, and his mother just showing him chords and him playing them. But I'm even thinking of children who just sit down one day, hear a concerto and play it. How do you explain that? And then you've got Zach on Red Pill 78. If you guys don't watch Zach, did a really interesting baseless conspiracy on Badlands with John Herod. And they talked about this particular topic, and they had people that just left. It's interesting to me that people can't even hear things they don't agree with anymore without becoming so offended they have to leave. you can think about things and what if, and without it changing your spiritual walk, without losing your Christianity. So I think people get a little nervous about things they need not be nervous about. I mean, Jesus asks his disciples, he says, "Who do you say that I am?" And they say, "Well, some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah." And he says, "No, but who do you say that I am?" And they say that you are the Christ, the Son of God. Um, Never in that interaction does Christ correct them and say, "How could I be Elijah? Elijah's already gone. How could I be John? John's dead." Those would be cases of reincarnation. Why doesn't Jesus correct them? Because it was a commonly held belief at the time. And apparently not so shocking to Christ that he took up an opportunity to correct it. Just interesting. Marie says, "I think we all have much to learn, maybe why we're all in different places in our walk." That's why we all need each other. Because I can't complete my walk. I can't complete what I came here to do without interacting with the people I'm supposed to interact with. So we have to interact with each other. If you've cut yourself off, don't be surprised if you get sent back to do it again, because you've got to learn to deal with people. Playing a video game in God mode gets boring after a while. It's the challenges that make the experience interesting and fulfilling. Very well said, Kay. That's a smart point. Placing a video game in God. Oh, I got that one. If prayers work, I need them. Okay, Lady Be Good. I'm at risk of losing everything I have in the next few months. I'm fighting hard, but a lot is not in my control. Have you considered a GoFundMe? What is going on? We don't want you to lose everything you have. I know you've got family that you take care of that's not well. Set up a GoFundMe. We'll donate to it. I'll promote it. I imagine Zach would too. Definitely if you need me to reach out to Zach with information on a GoFundMe, I will do that for you. So just let me know. You've got my email. I'm definitely praying for you. I pray for all of you guys. I prayed for you this whole time I've been down, recovering from surgery. Because it's Christmas and this is a hard time of year for people. I'm so aware of that. But anyway, that's all I had for you today. I really wanted to try to show you guys this jewelry I've been working on. Let me see if I can set up the second camera. Because I think if the light's not behind me, I can actually show you these and you'll be able to see them. Okay, let me go here and open this camera. This one, let's see if it shows up. Continue. There we go, that's me. Okay, let's turn it. Waiting. Yeah, they are all connected. Hold on, make sure it's working on here. I'm going to see if I can add this because I really want to show you what I've been working on. Give me a little minute here. Arian webcam. There we go. Okay. Now we'll go back here and let me flip it. Okay. I'll see if I can lay these out here so you can see them. Okay, so I've got to add it to the screen. Let me move me over. I'll get it yet, guys. Hang on there a little minute. Okay. Add to scene. And okay, see that? Let me lay it against black so you can see it a little better. Okay, so that's one of the necklaces. I wish you could see it well, but anyway, it's super. Let's turn it this way so you can see it. Need to dust. So there's one. Here's one of the bracelets. And that's just acrylic paint that I poured and made little patterns in, waited for it to dry, and then cut it out and put it in the jewelry. Hold on, let me get back here to comments. Okay, I really like these little bangles. And there's what that one looks like. They've got really pretty patterns. I feel like I'm missing the camera. Here we go. So that's pretty. I've got some of them already packed up for Christmas, so I can't show them all to you. But I got a couple more here. Here's one. It's got pretty little, almost looks like wood, and they've got little glitter in them. It's kind of hard to see in this light. Did we look at this one? No, this is my favorite one. Isn't that pretty? There we go. Anyway, and these are just little bracelets. Come on. There it goes. Isn't that nice? And you can, I wish I could show you the glitter, but they're super pretty. I made little ones for my, let me turn this camera off. Remove. Okay. I made little ones for my little granddaughters because Sophie's 4 and Nora's 8. And I made those. Let me turn this off. I made those so that they are little charms, so they can add. So I made a bunch of these, not attached to anything, and just put a clip on the end, like that closes your necklace. And they can clip different ones on the bracelet so that they can have little charms that they can remove. I can see if I can get that out of my drawer. Hold on. I think I showed you all of these. That one's really pretty too. Anyway, I'm not going to show you anymore because I have to set the camera up, and that's a pain in the butt. Remove camera. There we go. Anyway, you know what? I'm not good at the canvases. Those aren't turning out well, but there's a huge learning curve. But the jewelry I got the hang of really quick. And so I'm excited about that. And I just made little pendants. So what I made for the daughters and daughters-in-law was a necklace with a matching bracelet. And then for the girls, the little girls, I made necklaces with the bracelets with the little charms on them. So those will be super pretty. They turned out really, really well. This is one of my favorites. I hate that you can't see it very well. It's just the light from the window and, all of that. But the copper is really pretty in there. I'll see if I can get some good pictures to show you guys because they did turn out super cute. I don't have a lot of talents, but that's one of them. But like I said, I've been trying to explore more hobbies because I've just gotten really shut in, and I have to be careful with that. I know a lot of you struggle with that too. And so I'll try to do a jewelry video here. I've not done a video because it takes so long, and I'm trying to get Christmas presents done. I've got these boxes that I've got to pour things on, but I'll try to get some video captures of it and then just edit them out into a video because doing it live is really, really hard. And then I had a really pretty canvas I did the other day, and I dropped it on its face. It was the only one that turned out. Like the cells developed, everything turned out super well until I dropped it on its face. And then I was so mad I couldn't do anything else. Oh, I was so mad. I want to see if I can't get them. I'll take some pictures and I'll show them to you guys on Friday. But anyway, I'll be here Friday. If you guys did not see the promo video for Girls Night Out, it's up. And so Frida will be here with me on January 5th, I think. We're going to try to do one Saturday a month. I'd like to get her for 2. She's so flippin' funny. I mean, even our texts are just absolutely hysterical. I think it's the 5th. Well, my calendar will open. December, January. No, it's the 6th. It's the first Saturday in January. I think it's at 7:30 at night. There's a promo video up so you can find it. But anyway, it's Freaky Frida and Nurse Penny, Girls Night Out. It's going to be super fun. We're already collecting videos to show each other, little shorts and stuff that we're not going to see ahead of time so that we can react in real time. So I think you guys are really going to enjoy that. So we'll still have our Friday show, but we're going to add that Saturday show. So then there will be 3 shows. Nice seeing you, Christopher. And so I've missed you guys so much. 2 weeks was a long time to be away. A little longer, huh? Maybe a little longer than 2 weeks, or maybe this Saturday's 2 weeks. I can't remember. But I missed you guys. I'm doing well from surgery, still working on eating, mostly still on liquids, but I'm doing some like eggs, things like that. I'm down 20 pounds to get back into which isn't why I had the surgery. I had the surgery so that I didn't end up with throat cancer. But I did need to lose some weight. And so I probably need to lose 30 more. Don will think I'm too thin at that, but we'll see. But anyway, yeah, everything's going well. We're getting ready to have Christmas. We do our Christmas on the 30th. So we will be here. Hold on. I did want to give you guys Christmas update. So this Friday's the 22nd. We'll be here. Next Wednesday is the 27th after Christmas. We will be here. We'll be here the 29th. And then again the 3rd, and then again the 5th, and then Frida on the 6th. So that's going to be really fun. I'm going to get hold of Frank from quite frankly, also from the Dark to Light podcast with Tracy. And I'm going to be going on Frank's show. So now that I'm feeling better, I'm going to get that rescheduled. So I'll be going on that show to talk about my near-death experience if you guys want to catch that. And once I know something about that, I'll put a promo up. I'll try to get hold of Frank today. And anyway, I think that's it. I love you guys, whole big bunches. Let me pray us out. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day and for this time with my family and wonderful friends here on Rumble and YouTube and Facebook. Thank you so much to everybody who donated to help us with the surgical costs and costs of the show. It just means so much to us, that especially during these hard financial times, that people take, just a little bit out of their own and give to us. And that's just such a blessing. And we know that ultimately comes from God and honors God. Father, I want to pray for Lady Be Good and everything that's going on with her family. You know the whole situation. You know what the finances are. You know what the needs are. And I pray that if there's a GoFundMe, that we would be able to promote that and help them out. If there's not, I pray that our prayers alone would be enough, and that you would come alongside them and bring them comfort and some security. Things have been really hard for them, Father, and they need to see that you are a God that provides, and we need for you to bring people into their life to also be able to help and be the hand of God in their life. And we're just praying for that steadfastly for anybody who's separated from family because of political issues or COVID or whatever it may be. We pray that those separations would be healed and that those families would be drawn back together, that people who are not able to see the truth would have their eyes opened and they would see what's going on, so that we could all stop fighting each other and get on the same page and fight what the real problem is. And that would be our government, the uniparty that is kind of just driving us into a hole. And I just would pray that you would help people to see that and to stop fighting each other, because we are not the enemy. We do not fight against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities and things beyond this realm. And we would just pray for your strength and your provision in that fight. And we pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, guys, I love you, whole big bunches. It's Wednesday. I'll see you Friday. Really excited about that. I'll see if I can get a little craft video out in the next week or so. As I'm expanding my interests, we're also going to make, I noticed in the app where I track all of my intake, food-wise and drink, they have a list of like all these, you can put in what exercise you're doing. Well, I started scrolling through the list that exists, and there's all kinds of things I've never tried, like orienteering. I had to look that up. Skydiving, all kinds of things. So we're going to see how many things physically we can try that I've never done before and make some videos of those. So those will be fun. Those will be called Penny Tries It. We'll be doing some of that with crafts and some of it with, as it gets warmer, with things outside, getting out and doing some physical activity. So we're growing our content. We appreciate all of your all's support and love as we do that. And I will close out for now. I will see you guys on Friday. I love you, whole big bunches. Nurse Penny out.